Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Albrecht. I'm the Director of the Office of Regulatory Oversight, and this is the October 22nd meeting of the Technical Advisory Committee in order to look at making administrative rule changes for the implementation of Senate Bill 25-002, which is regional building codes for factory-built structures. This is not our first meeting. If there's any first-time attendees here that want to get caught up, we recommend going back to our website, Technical Advisory Committee website, and take a look at some of the past meetings. We appreciate everybody that is here today, and we've got some folks that can't stay on the entire time, so I want to get to them and let them introduce their team fairly quickly. So I'm going to share my slide deck now. You guys should be able to see that now. Is that a true comment?
Yep.
Okay, good. I thought I had it set up so I could see everybody and the slide deck, but that apparently isn't working today for me. So we'll just work through. So the agenda for today is very similar to the agenda for the past meeting, just some ground rules for the public. We'll talk some about our resources. We're going to welcome Shooms Coda, and then we'll jump into the three different rulemakings we're talking about. Rulemaking 1, which is almost done. Rulemaking 1.5, and then we'll talk a little bit about Rulemaking 2 and then next steps. Just some ground rules for the public. We do appreciate your participation. We do want to hear from you. These are an open meeting. We recommend if you have questions to either type them into the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. We will give priority to the 19 TAC members in order to get through business today. But we do welcome your input. We welcome your questions. And if you have any comments after the meeting, please send them to me at sam.albrecht@state.co.us. The resources for this work that we are doing today is, of course, the bill itself, and these are all hot links, and the slide deck will be posted along with the recording of the presentation. The bill itself is Senate Bill 25-002. We follow the statutes for the program in Colorado Revised Statute 2432, 3301 to 3329. And then the current administrative rules that we're looking at modifying are also a hot link there, along with the Building Codes and Standards website and the Technical Advisory Committee website. I also have a lot of helpers on this. Donnie and Heather and Michelle are all helping me keep track of the questions and letting participants in. And of course, if they miss you and you want to say something, just holler at me and we'll take care of you. Oops. So with that, I want to introduce Shooms Coda. As you know, we part of this project is to look at the local design criteria across the state and come up with some type of regional design standard zones that could make it easier for manufacturers while still respecting the local government's most stringent design criteria in the states. And then it gets a little more complicated because we're looking at wind load, snow load, climatic zones, design temps. We're also looking at radon, fire suppression, and wildfire hardening. And so overlaying all those things gets a little complicated, but that's why we brought in some experts to help us out. We're very happy to introduce Shooms Coda Associates to this meeting, and I will let everybody go ahead and introduce themselves. Cole, I think either you or Stephanie were going to jump in here.
Yeah, I will jump in here first, and then I'll let my other team members on the call go ahead and introduce themselves. Thank you so much for having us. We're really, really excited to be on board to help with this collaboration. We know that we're getting onboarded a little bit late, but we've had a lot of meetings with Donnie and the DOLA team to, get up to date on what's been going on and forge a path forward and, figure out how we can help. We watched some of the TAC meetings and excited to be on board. So today on this slide, we have David Bassinger and Christine Godinez, our CEO and COO, not with us. I am Stephanie Stuckemeyer, the project manager. My role in this project will just be helping facilitate deliverables and make sure everybody gets everything they need. I will go ahead and pass it off to Cole.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Cole Cloward. Currently, I am a plan reviewer / code consultant, whatever you want to call me here at Shums Coda, but also training to take Steve's place as the regional manager for Shums Coda in Colorado come the end of the year. And so my role in this project is just going to be more technical background and assistance in making sure that we get things all lined up and get a product that we all like.
Hi, my name is Steve Thomas. I'm the current Colorado Regional Manager and Education Director for SCA. I am semi-retiring at the end of this year, so 2 months and 8 days, somewhere in there. I'm going to be handing everything over to Cole. I will just be teaching codes across the country, but I'll still be in the background to provide a little technical assistance and those kind of things. So I'm not totally going away, but Cole and the rest of the team are going to be able to handle it just fine.
Is that
I think we got a.
Yeah,
I think
jump
Andre's
over to
there
me,
somewhere.
gentlemen?
Yeah, there you are, Andre.
Hey, sorry about that. My name's Andre Hayen. I'm also with Shums Coda Associates. I, like Cole, am a plan reviewer, inspector, consultant, call me whatever you want, just don't call me late for dinner kind of guy. I'm also helping develop some of our policy and sort of government relations related service lines for the company. So code official for 14 years now, and worked in Colorado for my entire career. So very excited to work on this. I do apologize that we'll have to jump off of this. I also serve the ICC Board of Directors, and I have some duties this afternoon that are going to take me away, but I did want to take the opportunity to introduce myself and get to know the team here, though I do see some familiar and friendly faces. So looking forward to working together.
Well, thanks, everybody. Stephanie, I think that was everybody from your team.
Yes, it is.
All right, cool. Well, like Stephanie mentioned, we've had a couple pre-meetings already. We've gone through the scope of work again with them, and and they're starting to get their background research done on some of the previous meetings. We're very happy about that too. We're not going to go take the time and do the one-on-one introductions with the TAC at this point in time, since I know some of Stephanie, your team has to bail pretty quick here. We appreciate you jumping on here, and I think you guys are going to take a deep dive into the next meeting. Is that right? The first meeting in November?
Yes, correct.
All right, cool. So we will look forward to that. Any questions right off the bat for Shums Coda? And I may start abbreviating you as SCA at some point in time, but we'll.
Most people do, so that everybody will respond to SCA, so that works.
All right, good.
I don't think we have anything at this time. Cole, Steve, and Andre, is there any questions you had today before you guys jump off?
Not that I can think of.
Nope. Yeah, we're all attending the ICC code hearings in Cleveland, so got to get back and change the code so we can mess everybody up.
Yeah, and I have a ICC committee meeting at 12 o'clock my time too. So
Yeah.
1 o'clock my time. So it's that kind of day, right?
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks, SCA, for showing up today. We do appreciate it. We know you're out of town traveling, but we did want to at least let the TAC folks know that we are off and running, and we'll make your contact information available, Stephanie, to the TAC team in case they have some questions for you. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to jump into rulemaking one and where we are with that. So we filed those rules on September 30th, and they were published on October 10th. And there's a hot link there that will take you to the draft rules as published in the Colorado Register. November 4th is our State Housing Board meeting where we present the amended rules in rulemaking one to to the State Housing Board for consideration. We are getting the board packet there. We will provide that information out to everybody on the TAC if they are interested in participating in that. It is a public meeting. They will take public testimony. So far we have one written comment about a clarification on the single exit stairwell from CML that we're going to address back to them and probably tweak that rule, the red line, just a little bit because they brought out a couple good points. I've got a bad reference statute in that and just some language change there, but doesn't change the intent of to allow single exit stairwells in buildings up to not exceeding 5 stories. So we did get one written comment. I think we still would accept written comments, but we turn in our final packet tomorrow to the State Housing Board for consideration. And then if that all goes well and they adopt the rules on the 4th of November, we will print them on December 10th to be published in the Colorado Register. Meanwhile, the Attorney General will have 20 days to take a look at those rules as they have been adopted. And we don't foresee any concerns with the Attorney General review at that point. And the effective date for those will be December 31st. Now, again, if you don't remember what we did in rulemaking one, we updated the rules for registered and certified business entities. And then we talked about installers that can't complete installations. We're clarifying the expiration dates for the registration and the supporting documents that go with a registration. The single exits and certain multifamily structures we just talked about. And then installer certifications for IBC, we made some changes to that. And then how it's going to work with business entities that have qualified certified installers, right? And they may have registered installers that are working to become certified. So we clarified that in the rulemaking too, Rule 612 and the sub rules there. Any questions on rulemaking one? I want to thank everybody that has participated in that process. And now we're going to jump into, this is pretty much put to bed, I think. We will report back after the State Housing Board to the TAC members on how it went. And then we will we'll take that off the plate because that'll be done. Rulemaking 1.5, we're still working the schedule on that. We hope to have the draft proposed rules sent to the TAC and interested parties by November 12th or before. And then we'll do the November 26th meeting to discuss and finalize those proposed rules. Now that November 26th meeting, I think, is Thanksgiving week. If you're not going to be able to participate, that's fine. You can send written comments in before that, and we will address them. But to keep us on schedule, we need to have that November 26th meeting. November 30th, we would file that final notice of the rules for rulemaking, and then it just flows out from there with a March 17th potential permanent rules in effect. All right, and what do we want to do in rulemaking 1.5? That we want to start allowing third-party agencies to do plan reviews and allow DOH to use a third party for final plan review or approval. That one, the DOH one should be fairly easy. The process for third-party plan approval for manufacturers should also be fairly simple, but it's a big rewrite. And so we have started looking at potential red lines to that those draft rules. We're not quite ready to roll those out, but we'll try to get those out in the next week or so to everybody so they can have some time to study them before that first meeting in November. And then we will try to work up the audit schedule too as we look at those third-party approved plans. And again, this bill also provides some clarification on audit processes, not processes, but audit authority for registered sellers, installers, and manufacturers. And that we need to, and as you would expect, we need to retain a copy of all approved plans for structures and how we're going to do that and create those assets in Salesforce and figure out what the filing fee might be to just file those plans once they've been approved by a third-party agency. So one of the things we want to make sure that we discussed, and today's a good day for it, is the ability for the division to contract with an approved third party and the process for third parties to obtain approval from the division to do final approval plan on the behalf of the division. And so that's where we want to spend a little time. And then also, as I mentioned before, on the audit process of that. So if you're manufacturers that have experience with, or third-party agencies that are listening in that have recommendations on what needs to be submitted for third parties to do plan reviews, that'd be great to hear. And then, of course, with the audit schedule on what is the frequency of the audits and who's paying for the audits for those third party plan reviews. So and overall, just in general, what we want to talk about is the qualifications and experience of the third party agencies. Again, audits, the enforcement piece of that. If we find things in the audit, how is that going to work? And then what the cost might look like. Again, experience that you manufacturers have or third-party agencies have with other states would be extremely useful here. And then the time to review and approve plans in case there is a backlog, and who can use third-party agencies for approval and best practice. And I've mentioned several times already, best practices from other states. With that, I'm just going to pause for a minute or two and see if anybody wants to throw anything else out for consideration for discussion today, or start addressing these. All right. Now, one of these standards, and this is for discussion, this is a multi slide list. I think there are 19 things on this list. As you know, we recently adopted ICC MBI 1205 standard, and that standard has a section on, I think it's section 4, well, I don't remember the section number of that ICC standard, but it talks about what could be required by the for third-party agencies that want to do plan reviews. And it's section 401.1. It says so right on the slide, right? And so I'm just going to run through this list real quick, and then we can go backwards in the slide deck if we want to. But go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Could you throw a link to that standard into the chat, please? Is that possible? I know it's an ICC standard, and we have trouble sometimes getting that without buying it or something.
Yeah, if Donnie, could you look that up? I think you can look that up quicker than anybody else and throw that link in there. So there's 3 standards that we adopted. One was ICC MBI 1200. That was the first one that dealt with factory built structures. Then we adopted 1205, which is the local jurisdictions, inspections, and third-party agency roles and responsibility, which is 1205, which is where we got this from. And then 1210, which I believe dealt with heating and cooling units, but I'm not real sure. So thanks, Donnie. Donnie's got the link in there to this code set. So 4011 talks about the name and address of the entity making, this is for third-party agencies now, name and address, disciplines for which a third-party agency seeks approval, list of key personnel indicating the primary functions or duties, the number of years the entity is actively engaged in the business for which it seeks approval, a statement by the evaluation agency that it shall adhere to the requirements of the regulations, and then a copy of an accreditation certificate issued by an ISO IEC compliant accreditation body. It also requires a copy of the registered design professional certification, a copy of the professional license or plan review certification that shall be performing plan review. There is an exception in 8 here for unlicensed plan reviewers shall be permitted to review plans, provided their work is directly supervised by a professional engineer, architect, or certified plan reviewer. And then a copy of the professional license or certifications for personnel that shall be performing in-plant inspections, and that the inspector shall only inspect in areas for which they are licensed or certified. 10 and 11, a statement that third-party agencies independent and not closely affiliated with the manufacturer for which they're doing plan reviews, and there's no conflict of interest, which is pretty standard. And that the statement on 11 that the third-party agencies shall review each design as required for plan approval and identify deficiencies on the corrective action report. And then that they're going to stamp it. 12 is a long one. It talks about the initial plan certification and documentation, that a written certification report to the manufacturer and the authority having jurisdiction, and it shall require 100% inspection of the aspects of the construction and not fewer than one module component. 13 and 14, just more on the inspection of the in-plant certification, and that a statement for ongoing inspections, third-party agencies shall determine the frequency of the inspection. And then the last page here is that it's the 15 through 19. The third-party agency shall provide to the manufacturer written or electronic inspection report after each inspection, a procedure for maintaining records to control the agency's labels, a procedure to identify all modulars and modular components. A third-party agency shall have insurance to cover liabilities arising from possible errors and omissions, and the request for approval shall contain the signature of a responsible officer, owner, or partner of the submitting third-party agency. So this covers both looking at, so this covers both plan reviews and it covers in-factory inspections. And Wayne, I see your question down here. Yes, the answer is yes. We adopted 1200, 1205, and 1210. We adopted them as reference documents, right? Because they were fresh, they were new. We did not have time to go through them in a lot of detail and rewrite the entire administrative rules as with the recommendations in there. We wanted more time to study them, and now we're studying them, right? We have adopted them as reference. We also have a statement in there that if there's a conflict between the reference standards and the administrative rules will trump the reference documents, and to contact the office in case you want to talk through anything. A couple of hands up. Robbie, we'll go to you first and then Tim over to you.
Thank you. I might have missed it, but I don't think I saw a reference to ICC certification for plan review. Certain designations, I know on the energy side, for example, you can get a designation for plan review and inspection. So I just wanted to double check that. And then also, I don't know if you're aware of Energy Star's in plant inspection protocols and whatnot for their certification, and it might be another thing to reference or look at to see if it's something that interests this body as a way to guide inspection in plants.
Robbie, those are really good points. And so number 8 here says the copy of the professional license or plan review certification for all employees that shall be performing plan reviewer. And it talks about the specific disciplines in the areas for which they're certified or licensed to do plan review. So that is covered. The second piece was the Energy Star and plant requirements for Energy Star. I would love to have, as we work after we get through this, to keep the TAC kind of going and what we want to do with energy compliance and Energy Star and other type of energy efficiency. It's a high priority for the state. I'd like to pull in the Colorado Energy Office as we talk about how we can better provide energy efficiency through the modular program and through our administrative rules and our program. And there may be opportunities to incorporate some of the stuff that you were talking about. Tim, I think you were next.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Just for a point of clarification more, I know currently the state allows in-plant inspections by third party. Is that correct?
We actually require it
Yeah,
for
okay.
our state. We require, and just to give an overview, the way that it works is that the plant sends us a quality assurance manual and assigns a quality assurance manager who follows who is required to do every stage of construction of every box that goes through. And then we require a third-party agency to do 2 inspections in plant of every box, a rough inspection and a final inspection for every single one. And so many of the requirements that I mentioned later on in that list are currently required in our administrative rules for the third-party agency. Right now, the manufacturer must provide the name and all that information of their third-party agency information to us before they can start production. So
Okay.
this kind of just I'm combining red apples and green apples here together as we talk about what the third-party agencies can do. But yes, they can, and then the in-state factories can either use us for those rough and final inspections, or they can hire a third-party agency, just like an out-of-state manufacturer does. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. That's great to clarify that for the board. That's what I was remembering.
Yep.
And with that, then part of that vetting process from your staff, which would be Donnie and his team, would be making sure that the third-party inspection firm has Colorado licensed electrician and Colorado licensed plumber to do those particular ones. The mechanical, of course, is not required to be licensed yet. That may happen next year. We'll see. But that, so because there was new legislation about 2 years ago about requiring electrical inspections, residential side, to be done by a licensed electrician and not, like, for instance, like what I have, an ICC certified residential electrical. So 2 years ago, I lost all my memory and I can't inspect electrical anymore. Thank you for the clarification.
You bet, Tim. Thank you. I don't know who was next, Dean or Donnie, but whoever was next, jump in.
I don't want to overtake you, Donnie, there. I actually have 4 questions on this, Sam. Do you want me to just lay them all out there? Or
Yeah, lay 'em out, Dean.
All right. So first, right out the top, we're talking about plan reviews and we're talking about inspections and factory,
Yep.
which, I mean, those are definitely very different things. And we're talking about third party. I feel like we should define first and second party in both cases in any kind of rulemaking that we're making here, because we shouldn't assume that, I mean, first and second party, maybe factory and owner, maybe factory and general contractor, maybe factory and design team, maybe design team and owner, maybe like in a plan review, the first and second parties are different than in a inspection. And so can we define that first?
I'm not sure I follow, Dean. Help me out a little bit with this.
Well, like in the industry, we so regularly say, "Oh, third party review," but we fail to identify who the first and second party is. If I'm a third party reviewer, I probably can't review my own design work, so I'm probably the first or the second party. But is the other of the two parties the factory, or is it the owner? Because this it gets into contracting, which is actually my second question. When we're required to have a third-party reviewer on, say, accessibility review, I can't hire that third-party reviewer because they're no longer third-party if they're under my contract. If I'm doing it on behalf of an owner and the owner is hiring a third-party reviewer, but the owner is one of the parties, then they can't do it either. Like, it needs to be an independent third party. So we need to clarify this, because we can very easily inadvertently create conflicts of interest without even knowing it if we don't know who the third party is supposed to be independent of in order to be truly an independent third party. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So the way, let me rephrase that, Dean, and see if I've got it right. So the way I see this working is that a manufacturer has a set of plans drawn up either in-house or with a architectural firm that is a set of stamped construction drawings, right? So there's your first and second parties there. It could be in-house, it could be a contract with EV Studio, right? And then the third party agency is an independent, no conflict of interest, third party review of that, which gives another stamp on that for final approval to start construction.
So does the owner have to contract with that third party then?
Currently, it is the manufacturer's responsibility. You're saying owner, I'm saying manufacturer, but I think we're saying the same thing.
Well, not necessarily though. That's where we get into the ripple effect, right? Because if a factory is contracting a third party reviewer and the third party actually has a monetary alignment with that factory, there could be a conflict of interest. I'm no lawyer, but we've been down this road with totally unrelated conflict of interest issues with respect to other kinds of inspections where we were barred from being under contract with the entity that was really the first party, right? In that case, a general contractor hiring us to inspect work for the general contractor. Well, now my allegiance is to that general contractor by contract, and that actually creates a problem legally. Again, I don't know if we have a lawyer on the call, but I'd love to hear input on that, because it's a murky area, and I feel like if we're rulemaking, let's get that clear right out of the gate, because
yeah, right.
If a factory is allowed to hire a third-party plans reviewer, then awesome. But that third-party plans reviewer may be incentivized by that factory to clear the deck and make it go because the factory needs to get on the line. That would be a conflict of interest by definition.
Right. So Dean, I guess I get. So are we most concerned here about multifamily and where you have a developer that is the owner of the project and they're contracting with the GC and perhaps the final approval of the plans?
That could be, yeah. I mean, like the corollary there, Sam, would be, if we were doing a stick frame project and my GC was taking care of the plans review, I don't think any of us would feel comfortable with that, right? Like that, I've never heard of that ever happening. And the GC also can't hire their own inspectors. Like, they are first party. They can't be involved in a third party review or inspection. So if we're allowing a factory to do that, I have no issue with that, but we need to be crystal clear, because that's not crystal clear when we use the term third party reviewer or inspector.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. I want to go to, and I know you said you had 4 things.
That was 2 of them. So I can wait on the other 2.
Okay, don't forget them though.
Yep.
Donnie?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get myself off mute here. And I guess real quick, just for the conflict of interest, I think it's best that if you think that there may be a conflict of interest, maybe talk to your attorneys and see if there's a conflict of interest between somebody reviewing your documents based on how you're contracting with that third party. I think that's going to get a little too complicated if we start putting things into rule on what is conflict of interest to us, because there might be something that we misinterpret. It's best that you just contact your attorneys on who you hire and if there's any special interest between the 2 parties that is going through that contract. You know, in a way, we're somewhat of a third party plan reviewer ourselves, right? Because we're not the ones that developed your plan, but we are reviewing that plan for final approval, just like we are approving other entities to approve plans on our behalf. They have somewhat the same power we do when it comes to the approval process, and somewhat the same qualifications that we would typically have to review those documents and approve them. So maybe I think that's how we need to handle that. I'm not sure if we want to put something in rule for that. But what I wanted to go over is these items that are on these slides. These are just some considerations we should think about, or if there's any other ideas that we may come up with. But some of these items, I think on the first slide, I was talking about a number of years a third party has been acting in that service, maybe clarifying some of those items, like, you know, what's a reasonable amount of years? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? You know, what kind of certifications are we going to look for, kind of to, you know, Tim Pate's comment, like, or not Tim, I think Robbie said something about the energy provisions plan review certifications, right? If we have people who are stamping documents, what are their minimum qualifications? Or if you have one person that is in charge of stamping documents, that they're the ones that have these minimum qualifications, and they might be hiring individuals who look at these plans that might be looking at them for specific code requirements, but might not have the certification yet. But ultimately, that person is the one that's stamping it. So, for instance, a lot of local jurisdictions that operate, just for instance, for me, when I first started as a building inspector, I didn't have any building certificates, right? But I got my certificates within 3 months of hire. And then I got more and more along the way, but there's things that I did inspections on that I didn't have necessarily a piece of paper that said I was qualified, or I had experience looking at that, but I was still looking at it, right? So maybe there's a minimum requirement, like currently when we ask for qualifications of an individual who's doing inspections, if they're looking at residential, we typically look to see if they have a residential inspector certification, at a minimum, the building, residential building inspections. If they are looking at commercial, minimum of the IBC inspector qualifications, right? As time goes on, they gain more, but there should be at least a minimum, right? Or at least a time limit. Hey, if they don't have it within 1 year of hire, they need to have they need to have it after the 12-month period, right? So we can look at this list, and if this list is something that we agree on, let's possibly make it a little more defined. And the reason why I say that is it creates consistency across the board. So it's not up to the reviewer to say, well, I'm not sure if this person who got their cert in 2 weeks is a qualified inspector, right? If they get the certification and that's our minimum requirement, then they meet the requirement for doing inspections on our behalf. If they meet the requirement for plan reviews that we put in place, then there's no question about it. They got the certification, that was the minimum requirement, and then move forward, right? Just so that there's consistency across the board.
The other thing I want to mention, thanks, Donnie, is that Donnie and I have had some talks about pulling out third-party agency qualifications and requirements into its own chapter in the rules. Right now, they're in the manufacturer section. We think as we move forward with the increased responsibility of third-party agencies, that it kind of needs its own section of the rules, especially as we expand to final plan approval and clarifications based on this standard also into the in-plant construction. And then if we're doing any on-site inspection by third-party agencies, that is also clarified. Tim and then Wayne.
Yeah, thank you. First comment is I totally agree with Dean's thoughts and comments with the rulemaking process to be absolutely sure that we get that kind of set in stone, that the
Tim, you broke up a little bit. Go ahead.
Sorry, I actually muted you, Tim. I was trying to mute another person.
Donnie, you muted Tim? What?
Sorry.
He's tired of listening to no. I'm sorry. So I kind of back up, but with Dean's comments, I think it's absolutely critical that since we're in this rulemaking process, that we make it absolutely clear that it's going to have to be a third party that has no interest in, vetting to make sure that they are an independent. I've had multiple multifamily projects that it's the same, it's the owner is the designer and the construction firm. So Trammell Crow's a big one that's always done that. But I've got 3 other projects that are ongoing right now that are the same thing. So, but I haven't yet run across any of a multifamily project that tries to do third party. It's always we do it, or we would farm something out. So, but those 2 comments, I agree with Dean's kind of thought process, but I just want to throw out just what I've seen. Thank you.
And so Rule 10 is, I went back and I'm should be displaying that slide. Rule 10 there talks about that it is an independent. They've got to provide the independent, no conflict of interest statement. It gets questionable. I know, Dean, you brought up a good point is, well, if they're contracting with the third party agency, is there any undue influence due to that? I don't think there's a third party agency that would risk their entire portfolio of business across the United States by taking any undue influence from the manufacturer, and I don't know that any manufacturer would really try to do that. And then we still would have the audit process where we could go through there and take a look at that also. So I wanted to bring those 2 points up, and then I think it was then Wayne and then Mark.
Quick, I added the definition we already have in rule of what conflict of interest is.
And Robbie, you asked a question about the 2024 IECC updates to the approved third-party inspection agencies. We could talk about that. We're on the 2021 code set. We are not looking at any of the 2024 code adoptions at this point in time, but I might be missing the intent of what you're looking for there. Wayne, go ahead.
So yeah, I dropped a screenshot of the independence provisions from the special inspections chapter of the IBC, because I'm also in support of what Dean's alluding to, that I think it's a bit nebulous, like we're addressing it, and I think we can address it a little bit more to make it explicit. I think for the most part, contractors are going and manufacturers are trying to do the right thing, but I think we have an opportunity to clarify that, and I like the language from the special inspections provisions to further delineate that it shouldn't be the manufacturer, the contractor that's paying for that or ultimately driving that. Because I think in this instance, right, ultimately we're looking for an agency to act on behalf of the state or the behalf of the jurisdiction. And I think I think that's, I think there's a natural, I guess, a natural conflict that we're potentially creating.
Thanks, Wayne. I am all about clarifying, and so the more we can clarify, the better. I will go back to one of Dean's points also and talk about owners a little bit, and we can work through that. We now have cities, counties, and towns that are owners of projects, and we sometimes get pressure internally to hurry up with our inspections because they've done a
Sure.
lottery and they're ready to announce the residents that were able to get the units, that the subsidized units. And so we want to make sure that we don't, and we handle that as they come up, but we don't want to put any third-party agency or anybody else in that type of situation. Mark, you were next.
Yeah, Dean, this is basically for your clarification. I'm probably one of the few on the committee that has served on all sides of this fence. I was state, third party, and now I'm with a corporation that does manufacturing. But underneath a third party, we were not allowed to do any designs. We were only allowed to do what they called peer reviews, and that's for our ICC certifications. We had to have, as a plan reviewer for a third party, I had to have all three tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3 of the ICC certifications, and the accessibility and the energy and everything else to do these plan reviews, which is not the easiest thing in the world to obtain, but it takes a while to do it. Now, underneath that, at least for the third party that I worked for, nobody was ever turned loose that just because they passed a test. They had to actually go out and serve underneath a probation period. Some of them were up to a year. Like North Carolina, you have to provide a year's inspection reports for that individual to be certified for North Carolina. But just to give you a better feeling about this, that yes, the conflict of interest is the third parties cannot do designs. They can only do peer reviews of them. But on that side, Dean, you're an architect or in PE, you know that you can tell the third party to take a, if your engineering judgment says that this design works, you can actually do a letter basically saying in your professional opinion that the design does work. But being on all sides of the fence, conflict of interest is very clearly spelled out, especially with like states like Texas, California. Some of those states are very, very clear about what their conflict of interest is, and a third party cannot do designs at all. Just to clarify that, Dean.
That's a good point. And then the other point I want to take away from that, Mark, and I appreciate you jumping in there, is that maybe we need to have the time that a person has been doing plan reviews instead of just passing the test and being thrown onto the plan review, right?
Yes, and you can actually request a copy of what we call the IMs. It's the policy of the third party for their training program. They, to get their certifications either through IAS or the other accredited bodies to do these modular construction, they have to be certified. The third party I worked for was one of the few Guide 65s.
Okay.
So they were basically do all of it. But yeah, you can request that information from the third party on their procedures for training.
Cool. Thank you, Mark, very much. Dean and then Tim. Dean, you took your hand.
So we're weaving in and out of the third party piece as well as the qualifications piece for either a plans review or an inspection. Again, in my mind, I'm trying to keep plans reviews and inspections very different, because as as an architect of record or an engineer of record, I have been allowed 100% of the time to do inspections in the field for work that we designed, because we are a third party at that point. We're not the builder and we're not the owner, so we're separate in that respect. But absolutely never would we be able to review our own set of plans. That would be a clear conflict. But just kind of my final or ending thought on that, Sam, is I mean, if you guys have, you know, somebody in the DOLA ecosystem of a legal background that can just weigh in, because there's always been some murkiness. And I mean, if we took a straw poll of everybody on this call, we'd probably come up with maybe a 50-50 split of, you know, if I have a 6-figure contract with a client to do work for that client, does that not already create a bias, either intentional or unintentional, that could lead to a conflict of interest, because that client is paying my bread and butter, and I'm doing a quote unquote third party plans review that benefits my client by allowing them to, you know, start production and so on and so forth. And that is where the question lies. And I think when it comes to rulemaking, if we say that either is or isn't clearly a conflict of interest, then that gives clear instruction that a factory can always hire a third-party plans examiner to do their plans inspections, which is kind of the current case. But, you know, I can just imagine if that ever came up in a court of law, an attorney could tear that to shreds. And even though we all feel like it's perfectly legitimate, it doesn't really matter what we think. But if it's in a rule, then it's a rule. So then,
And Dean, I appreciate that, and I will run this by the attorney. We are digging down into other states' processes and procedures too, so we can get more reference data there too. But yes, the program has an attorney through the Attorney General's office that we run things through, complicated complaints. She will also be the one that will review the rules after they're published, and she is acceptable to looking at them before they get published, just to make sure that there's not any problem. And we will ask her about this.
terrific. Thank you. So my other questions were related to exactly where we were headed and what Mark Lindsay had
And let me
touched on.
clarify too, you
Yep.
know, I realize, folks, that it's hard to make yes or no decisions right now without seeing draft red line rules, right? So we're talking concepts here that will help guide us as we prepare the red line rules that we hope are a better round after we get through today's meeting, or a better draft than what we're talking about internally and getting all this input. So this is really good input. And again, I hope to have those draft red line to you next week sometime, so we can really start tearing into it because of the short time frame on this piece of it. Now, Dean, go ahead.
Terrific. Yeah, so then the second part of my other two questions are, you know, very much related to what Mark was talking about in terms of you know, the process. And one of the, I guess the easy question maybe to answer is, in the ICC standard, there is a little section that talks about plan reviewers where unlicensed people can do, or I don't know if it said unlicensed or uncertified people can do the work, as long as their reviewing work is under that of licensed people.
Yes.
I don't really know what that means when we're talking about plans reviews. I know exactly what that means when we're talking about producing the documents and producing designs and production of construction documents. But when you're reviewing, I don't know how I would oversee an unlicensed reviewer, because the only task to do is review, and there's no real way to do that. So I've always kind of had that problem with that exception in the ICC standards. So if we're talking about it, you know, formally adopting that as rulemaking, I think we need to address that, because that language comes right out of the same language in Department of Regulatory Agencies, which says, you know, hey, if I own the company and I'm a licensed architect, I can have unlicensed staff and they're doing the work under my direct supervision, and that's okay. I can still stamp that legally. But I don't know how that applies to a review, because a review is just, again, it's that singular task.
And so I think I hear a recommendation to delete the exception.
I mean, I just don't know how it would apply, and I'm open to other people's, interpretation of that or their thoughts on that, because it's just unusual to see that in this very specific context of a plans review.
Yeah, I think that's what I was alluding to earlier. Like right now, if you plan on doing plan reviews, the minimum requirement right now is that you are a licensed engineer, right? So at the end of the day, that person that is licensed is the one that does the final approval, right?
Right.
And so that's why I said earlier that, do we require every plan reviewer who's doing a plan review to have a minimum certification, or do we allow somebody who ultimately they are going to be the one stamping the document that it's been approved, and they have to have all the certifications, just like the architect stamp itself, right? Or the engineer stamp. Like, you might have other individuals that are working on your behalf to review it, but it's on you to make sure that they know what they're doing. So when you are doing your overview of that drawing before you put your stamp on it, that person at the third party agency would be doing the same thing. Like, hey, I'm not going to hire someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Or like, hey, you might not know what you're doing, but I'm going to give you a certain amount of time to do it. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to review what you are submitting to me as approved, so I can review it and then put my stamp on it, right? So
Right.
I think it's the same concept. It's just, what are those minimum qualifications, right? What are going to be the minimum of the people stamping?
Well, and the differential there, Donnie, is like, I mean, in practice, if I have an intern producing, an architectural design, I'm the one reviewing it before I stamp it. If I have an intern reviewing, what am I reviewing then? If they've already, they'd have to take me through their entire review, in which case I've already done that. That would be a full review for me to do anyway. So I just don't understand how it applies in this very specific context of an actual plans review. Because similarly, I wouldn't go to another firm and say, hey, I want a peer review of my work. I'm going to insist exclusively that only a licensed individual is going to do that peer review. I don't want one of their interns doing that, and then their boss signing off on it. Like, how would their boss have any clue? There's no mechanism for that. So that's my concern there. And then tied to one of the things that Mark said, there is a mechanism for if a third-party reviewer and the licensed designer have sort of a disagreement on what works and what doesn't work. But I don't see anywhere in the ICC MBI standard or anything in our rulemaking conversation yet that would say, well, who wins in that argument if the stamping professional engineer says no, this works, then does the state just accept that in spite of the fact that the third-party reviewer wouldn't have otherwise approved it? Because then the third-party reviewer probably isn't going to put their stamp on that particular document. And how is that resolved? And we should probably have some clarity behind that.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, Dean, but there may be a case where, I mean, and then even the state wouldn't be able to tell the third party agency stamp it because we approve it, right? We could stamp it still if when we have a plan reviewer where we're acting as the final approval authority before construction. But I have not heard of anything not being worked out at that level. We've had some situations where we have had third-party agencies hold up plan reviews until they get those things worked out. Because right now we are requiring third-party agency stamps on things. But yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. I want to, and I see more hands coming up, and that's good. I want to go back and flag something for Donnie and I to talk about, and that is in foundations in areas of the state that don't have a building department. So right now, what I think we do, Donnie, is we will approve a set of plans for a foundation that are stamped by an engineer, and then the engineer can actually do some of that on-site construction inspection, right? And then let us know that the foundation was poured and implemented per the approved plans, right?
Yeah, we can do that. And I guess it depends on how far you want to dig into that. Cause like, just for instance, if we allow a certified third-party agency to approve plans on our behalf, do you want them to be the same individuals that are approving construction inspections at the factory? Right.
Well, I was thinking more of carving out for foundations only in areas of the state that don't have a building department. We could do it. We could do that. But yeah, that is worth discussion for other aspects, right?
Yeah, because I think it could be a concern that, well, if you're allowing them to do it, why can't I do it? Right.
Well, yeah, and the concern and for everybody on the call, the concern we've had with foundations inspections for the guys that are the foundation plan approval has been needed for a while because we often track back deficient complaints to a foundation issue, right? And so when foundations were being done without anybody, without a plan approval and without any inspections, we ran into that, and so the process that we put in place is because the foundation takes so many inspections, we've allowed an engineer to do that inspection based on the approved plans, and then they can go ahead and place the unit, right? So it may be a unique carve out that we want to continue, but we still have 10 or 12 counties in the state that don't have a building department to do all those peer foundation inspections. All right, let's go across the top. Tim, I think you were next, then Mark, then Wayne.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to backtrack a little bit to qualifications, if I could, and give you my opinion from experience. 15-year building officials hired quite a few inspectors, probably way too many because they keep jumping ship, and inspectors. I don't know where they go. But anyway, with that being said, I think if I was going to weight what I look for when hiring, for example, a plans examiner, plans analyst, I would say I'm going to be about 75% on experience and 25% on passing a test. I've seen, I've took a lot of tests in my many moons ago, but somebody can be book smart, and really, since the ICC tests are open book, if you know your way through the book, you can find the answer. But the reality is that doesn't mean that you know how to do a plan review. So I feel it would be important to have minimum requirements to both have the certification of some sort for what they're looking at, but really to be putting some kind of minimum amount of years experience to be able to vet that. But and back, like the recent comment is, I allow limited cases the engineer of record to do certain structural inspections on projects, and it might be like foundation repair permits or small additions or something like that, where the engineer who I feel comfortable is, I know it seems weird, it might be like a conflict of interest, but because they're hired, and goes back to the whole question of, Dean, and we were talking about earlier, but they're the ones that are familiar with the site and the plans because they did the design. So for better or worse, that's how I've done that, but not really on a big, definitely not on commercial. It's always going to be an independent third party, as the building code. So those are just some comments.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Tim. Mark?
I'm going to let Wayne go first. I think I know where
Okay,
he's going
Wayne?
with this.
Sounds ominous.
Yeah, right.
So a couple things. We keep saying professional engineer. Is that right? In the exception, it says specifically the supervision of a professional engineer, but everywhere else it's registered design professional, from what I can tell. Are we using those two synonymously, or are we
Yes.
really saying registered design professional and not necessarily a professional engineer?
What we ours rules have always considered to be a certified design professional.
Okay, so an architect, right? So Dean could he could be an AIA or a PE, and I would just be a PE
That's
or
my-
some other accreditation.
yeah.
Or is that what we're
Can you-
limiting it to?
Can
So
you
that's,
clarify that for me?
What was that? Should you say that again, Sam?
So the question is, are bouncing around between licensed engineer and design professional for plan development. And
Yeah, so my understanding, because this is something that we reference, but I think it's actually under the DORA's registration requirements. So if you are practicing engineering or architecture or any other kind of design approval that you're doing, there's certain requirements within DORA that requires registration. So like the assumption is if you're going to be stamping, let's say you are a structural engineer, but you're stamping electrical drawings, right? There is some language that says that if you are stamping other documents other than what your stamp or your registration is for, you must have adequate experience within that field in order to actually stamp that document, right? So
okay. I think you're answering my question. So the intent is registered design professional, right? I'll just note that from, we work with a dozen or so different jurisdictions, and just to provide some context as to why we got to get this right. Like rubber stamping is a real problem in the state of Colorado. And I part of it I think is unintended, but we don't regulate as a state by discipline. So it's really hard to pin down someone that's operating outside of that discipline, right? So, and I don't necessarily know what that looks like here relative to maybe revisions or things that we want to implement. I wanted to put it out there in case it's not obvious. Like this is a real problem that we deal with in the jurisdictional side a lot. So with that said,
go ahead, Wayne.
I was just, again, the exception is, I think, needs to be clarified, because there we do pick up specifically professional engineer. And I think it's probably speaks to the greater topic of, okay, well, what do we think are the qualifications, and what is there specific registered design professional certificates that we want that might be more specific to this application? I think I had something else, but I got lost in my own talking, so I'll shut up for now.
No, Wayne, that's good. If you think about what the other one is, let us know. But I want to focus on your comment for just a second. And so, yeah, that's what we're here to discuss, is what are those third-party agency requirements that we're going to require them to, in order to do approve construction drawings for the start of construction, right? That have already been submitted by a licensed design professional to the third-party agency, right? And I'm wondering if you're seeing, you mentioned rubber stamping, but are you seeing this in the fire suppression and wildfire mitigation area that you're?
It's both, but I would say it's probably more. I see more of that only because that's where my
I know,
majority of my
right?
work-
And
yeah.
I'm so
But it is both for sure.
okay, cool. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Mark, then Dean.
Hey, Dean, I'm when a individual graduates school and is becoming a PE, he has to serve 2 years underneath a PE. He's still doing calculations, but he's underneath the overview of the PE. So in the plan review field, it's the same way. When we take our test and everything, and this is at least a third party I worked for, that person was not released. It's the same as an inspector, was not released until there was confidence in their ability for the application. And Dean, you hit it right on the head. Some of these guys are very intelligently book smart, but have no application of construction. They can walk into a plant and not notice that a column support is not constructed correctly. But they can look it up in the code and know exactly how it's supposed to be.
Sure.
But I'm with you 100%. But in the plan review inspection field, at least where I was at, even when I worked for the state, we had 180 days with that individual before, and then they were evaluated, and whether the probation period was extended or not was based on their performance and inspections, and they didn't do plan review. And that's one clarification that we need to understand, that the guys in the plants, the inspectors at level 1 and 2, are not allowed to do plan review. They cannot modify or make adjustments to those approved plans. That's within the guidelines of this. Now, going back to the engineer overruling, in 107 of the building code, it actually allows the engineer to do that. He can actually, in his professional opinion, if his design works, he can overrule. He is ultimately responsible for that design. It's his.
Right.
He's accountable for it. Just to let you know, Dean, that it's not people just being thrown out there and well, at least where I was at, there was not people being thrown out there and left unmanaged.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Dean, then Donnie, then Wayne.
Perfect. No, I appreciate the conversation here. I think there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes out of this, but I think we all want to see some clarity. And this goes back. I know we've had some recent conversations with Donnie also about, different project types and what's even required in terms of stamping and signing of the design documents that are being submitted for permit to the third-party agency or to the state or to even a local jurisdiction. Because as we know, in Colorado, single-family residence does not actually require stamped signed professional or a licensed professional to stamp sign the documents, but a 3-story walk-up apartment does. And this group is responsible for actually covering anything that's offsite, right? Anything from a tiny home to a 12-story high-rise that's done with modular. So I think we might be well served to maybe break some of that apart and have clarity on each of those building typologies, so that there isn't uncertainty behind what happens between a 4-plex and a 5-plex of exactly the same modules, right? Because that happens. But one would have to be stamped and signed by a licensed professional in the state of Colorado, and one would not. And what does the Division of Housing require for offsite construction? How does that work? So that would kind of sort of be my last thoughts on that particular piece of the conversation. My last question that I had on my list here, Sam, was actually related to what we're talking about in terms of certification requirements and the process of doing that. And I guess my question is very simple. Why wouldn't that role be governed by the Department of Regulatory Agencies? Why is that actually under the purview of this group, as opposed to the group that's actually governing licensed architects, engineers, and acupuncturists? Like, what am I missing there? Is there 2 lines of process happening there for those certification folks, or is all that certification actually happening under this group?
Well, we don't want to do dual certification, right? Dual certification as required by DORA, and dual certification as required by DOLA.
Certainly not.
Yeah, certainly not. That's not our intent. So if there is the possibility of just referring back to that, then that's the DORA piece. That's fine. The other thing that we have in the past struggled with is lines of responsibility for in-plant inspections out of state, right? And so and 002 helps clarify that to some extent. We've had conversations with DORA Electrical and DORA Plumbing already. If we need to have more, and DFPC on with licensing of architects and engineers, then we can certainly do that too. It's not our intent to run a architect and design professional and engineering certification program.
Hey, just real quick on that topic, so I don't think we want to put in requirements for the design professionals. That's really regulated by DORA, and that's what we tell people too. Like, well, can I stamp this? And I tell them, well, I'm not sure because I don't know what DORA deems acceptable for amount of experience. You need to reach out to DORA, right? The assumption is that with their stamping on the document, with the experience that they have, that they're authorized to do that through DORA. So if you look at our regs, it actually, or our rules, it says on there, Colorado design professional, right? Colorado registered design professional. And so with that, we've only been accepting Colorado stamps, right? So if you are an engineer, architect that is operating in the state of Colorado, through their requirements, you're required to register with them. So if you're stamping a document or a project that's in Colorado, we require that that stamp on there, even to the smallest detail of submitting a truss drawing, right? If you're submitting truss specs from a manufacturer, there's like 20 stamps that are on one document, but we look for that one Colorado stamp, right? As long as it's been stamped by a Colorado design professional, we would accept it. I think what we probably just need to focus on is the qualifications of the plan reviewers who are just doing simple reviews of commercial and residential projects, not necessarily the stamp or qualifications for the engineer stamp. As long as it has that Colorado registered design professional stamp, or somebody who's registered with the state of Colorado through DORA, we would accept that.
Sure. And I get all that. I just question, does a third-party plans reviewer or a third-party inspector for that matter already have to be part of a DORA process to get that certification, or is this certification exclusively only granted by this group?
Yeah, so again, if you are stamping a document for structural, I think in this case, we're just reviewing it. We're and the third party is just reviewing the document. They're not actually the designer approving that stamp or that drawing. Does that make sense? So they're stamping that they reviewed it for code compliance. They're not reviewing it that they've designed it and they approved the design based on their engineering practices or architectural practices, right? They're stamping it, they reviewed it to comply with Colorado standards. Right. So I don't think,
as the AHJ, right, is what you're saying?
yeah, they're not saying that, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but they're not approving the design in the sense that it's not their engineer stamp. They're using an approval stamp that they've reviewed it for Colorado compliance. I don't know how you would say that, but it's, I guess they're stamping it for two different reasons, right? Maybe somebody can help me out here that is understanding what I'm saying.
I think what you're saying is that ultimately the third party entity, they are not the engineer and responsible charge for the design.
Exactly.
But they are peer reviewing the compliance path utilized by the engineer or the design professional that submitted.
Exactly. Yeah, they're just approving that the plan is meeting the codes that we've adopted, right, to the best of their knowledge.
Sure. Yeah, but their certification in and of itself, it's granted by this entity, not DORA. Correct? Because like home inspectors, that's a certification granted by.
I think
so. I'm trying to understand which agency is really responsible for the qualifications, the testing,
yeah. So we're not
getting certified. Is that really the realm of this organization, or is that
that's DORA's, right? If you're using a Colorado stamp, right? For if you're an engineer, architect.
Again, I'm not talking about engineers and architects. I'm talking about a certified plans.
I understand that, but it's related, right? And so if you are stamping a document for the design, right, not the plan approval, but you're stamping a document using an actual engineered stamp, then you would have to follow DORA's requirements because you are, stamping documents that are related to a project in Colorado. But if you're just stamping the document just with the, typical TPA approval, like, Radco, NTA, PFS, all of them, they have their own stamp. It doesn't have to go through any kind of, special qualifications other than what we put in place for the approval of the drawing review, right? The peer review, as Wayne was saying, right? We can put things in place for that. But if we actually need to require an engineer stamp for any reason, then that would have to fall under DORA's requirements.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're just putting things in place for the peer review of the document, or the third party review that it's complying with Colorado adopted codes and standards.
Hey,
Does that
Dean,
make
I'm going to
sense?
show my age here a little bit. Many moons ago, for the state of Colorado, we used to have to put our name stamp on there as a third party. Our approval stamp had to have our name on it to say who was responsible for the plan review, to see that the ICC certifications were up to date. I don't remember, Sam, maybe you can help me out on this. I think it was like 12, 13 years ago. There was found to be a conflict of interest between DORA and CDOH on requirements for that, because ICC certifications are nationwide. They are not specific to Colorado. So once you are an ICC certified plans reviewer level 3 or a building official, an ICBO, you're good anywhere in the US by definition of the ICC criteria. But just to let you know, Dean, this was a long time ago, but we used to have to put our name stamp on these as a third party. They took that, they said we no longer require that. And it was DORA, I think, that came out and said that no, it's not, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are still some states back east that still require the name stamp on there. Massachusetts is one. You have to have your name stamp on there. But they have a different set of criteria. So to make it clear, I mean, the ICC certifications are not restricted to a specific state. I think that's where the technical registration comes in and says it has to be a Colorado registered engineer, because with IIBC, the Industrialized Building Commission, the engineer's residence stamp, if he's doing a design for New Jersey, but he lives in Colorado, his state stamp in Colorado is accepted in New Jersey. There's very few that are left with that. But
So that does put the onus on this division of housing to come up with a robust qualifications requirement, including, education and
I think on the design side of this, Dean, I think it lays on the PE, or in your case, the architect and PE, to meet the designs, because Colorado is very specific. I mean, there are zones here that we can go from 20-pound snow load to 195-pound snow load, and in a 20-minute drive. And I think it's up to the PE to do or the designer to do that, and then the third party would do the verification for compliance at that point as a peer review.
Sure.
Well, in that format that we're kind of talking about, sorry to jump in here, but
No, you're good, Wayne.
that format exists already, at least on the fire side. I don't know if anybody had a chance to review the fire suppression rules that I had sent over the last meeting, but that, so, we still have to put our name and our certification number, which comes from the state, based on being approved to act on behalf of the state as the jurisdiction for the local jurisdiction. And I think, right, we can let DORA drive all of the engineer architectural oversight of the design itself. I do think it makes a lot of sense, though, to steer the qualifications for this third party review integral to this to this aim, because I think they are unique. I think and it's probably really the only way to ensure the quality that we're hoping we all get out of this.
Okay, thanks, Wayne.
And I had remembered what I forgot
Oh,
earlier.
good. Go
You
ahead,
know,
Wayne.
they say memory is the second thing to go. I forget the first.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to bring up was, right, the whole concept of, well, the engineer stamped it, they're good. Like there's some caveats to that, right? Like, and we've ran into this before with the state where we're comfortable with a design, but there's not really a real clear path. In particular, this is true of healthcare. There's not a real clear path to pursue a code alternate or an engineering judgment. It's prescriptive or go home, basically. So I think, Dean, you had mentioned it earlier, right? Like understanding the hierarchy of who ultimately makes that decision, it is going to be real important, because inevitably site's going to change or something's going to change that is going to force some sort of alternative means or method to be looked at, right? And that role and responsibility is it's currently it can be a trouble point, that again, I think while we're sitting here, right, that should be part of this aim to try to engineer out that as good as we can, or as much as we can.
100%
All right,
agree.
thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Wayne. Donnie, any other comments?
Yeah, just real quick. So, one thing to kind of like look at, maybe just look at Rule 4, our current Rule 4. Toward the end, it's 4.30, and look at what those minimums are already, that we have in place. But also think about, the qualifications, not making them so strict that you just limit the amount of individuals that can actually do reviews or inspections, because maybe they have years of experience, right? They just don't have the certification. A lot of local jurisdictions work that way. You might not have a certification, but you have years of experience, and then they give you a certain amount of time to gain those certifications to do those approvals, right? So think about that, because if you make it too strict, even we have to look at this and say like, hey, how is this going to impact the program, right? If you start saying you have to have engineer stamp drawings, or you need to have certifications A, B, C, and D in order to stamp drawings, but you have the years of experience of reviewing and looking at those items, you can limit not only the third-party agencies who they hire, and you would have to hire somebody at the start with those certifications, and they might not have the certifications, but they have the years of experience, right? So looking at alternative ways of accepting these, because if we make it too strict, it's across the board going to be difficult for many people, right? And so if you, I think my concern is if you make it so strict that the division is unable to hire individuals who are qualified to meet those same requirements, without considering other years of experience, then you could possibly just limit yourself just to third parties only, right? Because maybe they have the revenue and the resources to hire engineers across the board for everything, but the division's not going to have that type of revenue to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for that individual to do plan reviews on our behalf. So you might just limit it only to third parties.
And I think that's a real concern, because I'm not personally lobbying for a registered design professional to be doing the review, right? There's plenty of reviewers that are very capable that are not technically registered design professionals.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Donnie, you're onto something there. That said, I do think this is unique enough that we need to qualify it somehow, right? And I don't know that it's a PE or a architect, frankly. I think that there's ICC certifications out there that would be more than sufficient. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a registered design professional. That's just a certification. To me, those are different. But I think
so we could do things like maybe minimum certifications, right? You're
right.
Engineer or ICC certified plans examiner, ICC certified building inspector. If you have, it's a different set of eyes from inspections to plan reviews, but as an inspector, you're still required to look at the plans to make sure that those constructions per the plans, right? So there's still some experience there, but maybe there's alternate ways we can still qualify individuals who have the experience to do that, right? So just think about that when we're putting these, or when you're putting your list together of what you think the minimum qualification should be. And then maybe think about years of experience. Is it, minimum of 5 years experience, looking at, simple, residential and commercial projects. But, you never know if you get a high-rise modular building here, maybe a certain amount of years of experience to look at those, right? Or do you have to be an engineer to do the inspections for that? And do you have to be an engineer to look at high-rise buildings, right? I think to be on the safe side, I think an engineer probably would need to be required to stamp an approval for high-rise buildings, right? Because there's a lot more structural stuff that goes into that than your normal, 3-4 story buildings, right? So things just to consider when we're talking about these. Okay.
And Dean, as an example, there are states like Ohio, Texas, Wisconsin, where you have to have special licenses to do their inspections and stuff. This adds an additional cost to these because there's only a limited amount of those licensed or licensed inspectors or licensed plan reviewers out there that can do that. And the third party I worked for, we flew people all over from everywhere to go there because they would get their license. But the scheduling, if I need them Tuesday, I may not be able to get them there till next Tuesday. And then the additional cost of flights and everything else. Just that's why the ICC certifications are, they're important. I agree. I mean, I didn't spend 5 years getting all of my certs just to throw them away, but I agree with you that basically there should be some level of competency on that.
All right, so that's been a very robust discussion on third-party agency requirements, and I do appreciate it. And we have some notes on that, and I think the next step is for us to throw out some red lines for everybody to start taking a look at. The other discussion with the slide that I've got up there now is who can be a third-party agency, right? And again, it's going to depend on the task to be performed. So we almost have to split this out by in-plant third-party agencies, plan review third-party agencies, and inspection third-party agencies, right? And so we have by default been using other local governments for some of the inspection requirements. We have something called a quality assurance representative definition it's either in our rules or our statute, Donnie, I don't remember which, and on who can be a QAR, quality assurance rep, right? So it means any state, firm, corporation, or other entity that proposes to conduct production reviews, evaluate a manufacturer's quality control procedures, and perform design evaluations. So I'm not sure that covers on-site inspections, and I'm wondering if we don't need to possibly change that. So right now we have a mix of states, local governments, firms. For this example, the state of Nebraska, by their statute, is required to do in-plant third-party agency construction inspections, right? And so we work with the state folks up there. Anything else that we need to clarify? Donnie, I'm going to dump this to you and see if you have any thoughts here to kind of kick us off.
For the qualifications and experience? Yeah, I think this goes back to what I was just saying earlier, that when we think about these qualifications and experiences, let's think about alternate ways to meet the same intent, right? They're the same goal, right? We're trying to get qualified people that that are competent enough to do what we're approving them to do, right? So let's just find some alternatives. If we're going to think of strict things, what are other ways to meet that same intent, right? Like I said, I don't think we want to make everybody an engineer to sign off on drawings, right? But an engineer can be qualified to stamp drawings, right? At least the review process. an ICC plan reviewer or another ICC certification, right? Is there any other certifications that might be out there? I know that a lot of the inspectors that I talk to with third-party agencies, they have certifications for other things that you typically wouldn't look at on a normal site-built construction, right? On the fire side, there's the fire plan reviewers 1 and 2, I think, or inspectors, fire inspector 1 and 2. Maybe think about certain things that they will be inspecting at the factory and what kind of qualifications we want to do. I think I'm somewhat speaking for Colorado Fire Prevention Control, but more of my idea of what they're thinking is that we still need to have some qualifications there for individuals that are looking at fire suppression plan reviews and fire suppression installations at the factory, right? Having some kind of minimum standard there for those individuals. Is it needed, right? If do we need to have, at a minimum, individuals that are looking at the factory, maybe if they're doing plumbing installations, having at least a plumbing inspector certification for plumbing if they're not licensed, right? Or if you're doing plumbing inspections, do you have to have a minimum plumbing certification to do plumbing inspections, not just the installations. But on the plan review side, if you're looking at a residential building, do you have to have a residential building plans examiner certification, or is just a normal building certification okay? And then later on, as time goes on, you can get your residential plumbing, your residential mechanical, and your gas and the electrical, right? So just think about that, but just remember, we don't want to make it so strict up front just to get qualified that you just limit the industry on who they can hire, right? Give them some time, think about the experience, and maybe a limit. Like, hey, if you want to at a minimum be qualified, you have to have a certain amount of experience or a certain amount of years of experience and a minimum certification, right? And then anything beyond that's great, but this is the minimum, right? That's what I resaid what I said earlier, but yeah, that's it.
All right, thanks, Donnie. Any comments on this slide before we roll through? I want to be respectful of folks' time. We've got about 21 minutes left. Again, more on the qualifications. The question here is, how should those third-party agencies be required to be certified or registered? Donnie and I go back and back and forth on this right now. And so this is one of the questions that we're diving into some of the other states with, if the third-party agencies have to be registered or certified in the state in order to do plan reviews.
I was going to say, just for clarification, registered and certified based on our current certified status, right? It's certified status. Should they obtain a certified status and only those TPAs be allowed to approve plans on our behalf, or do you just make the requirement across the board the same? And so anybody who's a TPA has the authority to do approvals on our behalf, right? So another thing to think about.
Yep. And then the last slide on this is along that same line, right? Do we certify third-party agencies for final plan approvals? And do we make the approval the same across the board for all approved entities that are certified? And then there was some discussion about if this last bullet is what I recall correctly, if you'd have in your third-party agency to do final plan approval and in-plant inspections, or do we need to separate it? I think we talked to California yesterday, and they have no separation requirement between the third-party agency and factory, also doing the third-party agency plan review and approval, right? Dean.
Yeah, I'm just curious on that last question, Sam. I mean, what would be the benefit of requiring separation? It seems it'd be far more efficient for the plan reviewer to do the inspection, much in the same way that a designer doing a field inspection is extremely efficient and benefits kind of all parties.
I don't see a big problem with it. I just wanted to see if anybody here was really concerned. I mean, I think because the different people are doing the different functions and they have all signed up with us to give us their qualifications. If our audit program and our field audit program works right, we should be able to make corrections along the way. They should be self-correcting if they find anything. Our relationship with the local jurisdictions is good. We can make those corrections. Yeah, it might just be, and not in particular, but alluding to what you were talking about earlier, is putting all your eggs in one basket, right, with one company. And does that give them the manufacturer any undue influence, where if you got two different third-party agencies doing some of your separation stuff, then does it make the process better, or does it just make it harder and more expensive, right? And I guess we're not going to be able to talk to all 50 states. So manufacturers, if you have any input on this, we'd love to hear it. Donnie?
Yeah, just real quick too. So the current, it's not a registration, although you're submitting an application for, it's an approval for TPAs. But during that approval process, you are required to let us know what you want to do. So maybe there's a TPA that only wants to do inspections, or maybe there's a TPA that only wants to do plan reviews. It wouldn't make sense to force them to be approved to do both, right? Because what if they don't have any qualified inspectors, right? And then you just limit them from applying to becoming certified. Maybe they only want to do certifications for plan reviews, or they only want to do certifications for field inspections. So that's what the separation is. Do we require them, or do we require them to be two separate certifications? Or do we just say, like, hey, if you're doing both, then you have to, or if you're trying to become certified for plan reviews, but you also do inspections, you have to become certified in both. So it might be better just to separate the two. But if it makes sense for that business to get certification in both, they can do both. Or again, if you're doing both, maybe just make it a requirement that they have to get certified in both. It depends on how you guys think is the best way we can do this. There's a couple options there, or at least a few options to do that.
Yeah, I think they have to be qualified, and Donnie and I don't disagree on this. We think they have to be qualified in the area that they want to do, right? And as we look at, I often here's an example. We're getting quite a few startup panelization manufacturers that are looking for third-party agencies. And then they call us and it's like, well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about in factory? Are you talking construction? Are you talking about plan review? Are you talking about certification of your getting a tested product that you can use? Or are you talking about field inspections, right? So there's and some of these new manufacturers just aren't quite there yet. So I think from a resource perspective, we're looking at modifying our system, a Salesforce system, to show the third-party agencies by their qualifications to do X, Y, and Z. All right, Wayne?
I was just gonna ask, because it's not real clear to me, but when you all would go hire someone, right? Are there minimum quals that would be required from a state perspective?
Yeah,
if
right
so,
now it's in chapter 4, and Donnie alluded to 4.30 and beyond, I think, is the third-party agency current qualifications for in-plant construction inspections.
No, Sam, when we hire individuals, we do have in our position descriptions,
Yes.
minimum qualifications for that. So we take into consideration years of experience and certifications. It just depends on the position. So a lot of positions are like inspectors, right? A minimum of
Right.
one certification per building, right? It doesn't matter which building certification that you have, but there's a minimum of a certification requirement and of years of experience, at least for our higher positions like inspectors
Yep.
2 and 3. But maybe entry level, maybe just years of experience would be efficient or sufficient if they don't have the certification, but giving them a 1 year probation to get that certification.
Well,
Correct.
my purpose in asking the question is that feels like a logical starting point as to what these qualifications should be relevant to the third party agency, because right, we're effectively giving the option of a third party agency relative to what the state would have otherwise provided. At least that's
That's a
how
good
I'm
way to look at it, Wayne. That's a good way to explain it. Yep.
that's how I'm seeing this. And if that's wrong, please clarify. But I think that makes sense to start there, understanding what the state would otherwise, in the absence of a third party agency, require of its own people, and then see if we need to infill from there.
Yeah, and well, that's what I was alluding to earlier is not making it so strict, but putting some alternatives in there so that you're still meeting the same intent of what we're looking for, right? It doesn't have to have a certification from the start, but
Right.
depends on what you're looking at too.
Yeah,
right?
like you alluded to, right? Like we shouldn't categorically rule out an engineer, right? But you don't have to be an engineer.
Exactly.
In figuring out what that looks like relative to the project type is maybe or the scope is maybe the challenging part. But again, just trying to start somewhere and thinking that whatever qualifications the state entity would otherwise require, again, seems like a logical starting spot.
Yep. Thank you, Wayne. Tim?
Yeah, that's, I now kind of changing a little bit, but agree with Donnie in terms of not trying to make it so strict. And for an example is Broomfield, for plans analysts, our job description does allow me to hire someone without a plans analyst, ICC plans analyst certification, but they're required to get that within 180 days, I think is how that's set up. And then the supervisor makes sure that we get that person through, and the hiring range or the starting salary is reflective of that. So I think having that alternative would be a good idea to kind of be able to get options out there, because it's so hard to hire people coming in to a jurisdiction from the private sector as it is right now. I think from a state standpoint and local jurisdictions, I think that would be a good move. That kind.
Thanks, Tim. All right, so that kind of concludes our discussion on that. Audits, just to throw that out, again, we've got 11 minutes and we're going to end on time. If you have suggestions on percentages of plans to be audited and a grading or scoring system that you've seen in another state that works well, please send us that. We need to get that wrapped up also. That is part of Rulemaking 1.5 as we move forward. And the question then is also, when we look at these, are we looking not only at the manufacturer submitted drawings or the audit of the TPA review, or both? What frequency? We've kind of already alluded to that. And what fees should be charged for audits on our behalf, and who should pay the audit fee? And that's we're trying to get more information from the other states. But let us know on that too.
Hey, Sam, just real quick before we jump to further, the one thing I forgot about mentioning on the approval process for third-party agencies, maybe we should come up with an approved stamp so that locals and statewide know that this is a third-party approved drawing that has final approval. So like right now, locals know that when they see our stamp, that's a final approval, right? But if they start getting third-party agencies who are approving plans on our behalf and they're using the same TPA stamp that they would do without them being certified, how do they know which one's actually certified for final approval?
Yeah, Donnie, that's a good point. And I think that was the discussion we had with Sam or one of the other CBOs, Don or somebody, about, because we are changing, it could have been Tim, but since we are changing the way that we're doing business, we need to maybe look at clarifying that when the locals see that for the permitting and zoning process, right?
Yeah.
Wayne and Tim, you guys have your hands up?
Oh, that's right. Wayne's first.
Wayne? Wayne, going once, going twice? Tim, you're up.
Yep, but question, the audit is being done or would be done by state staff?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had my hand up from before and somebody who just called, so you're good. Thank you though.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. And, you know, we have always had the option for, well, we want to keep open the option for manufacturers to come straight to us for plan review if they want. Especially if we have plan reviewers on staff, if that makes sense. So, Dean?
I'll just throw this out as a suggestion, but if we were to take notes from any of the state boards who regulate professional licensure, audits aren't really like a scheduled thing. It really, an issue comes up whenever there's a complaint. So it's really a complaint-driven process as opposed to a scheduled process. So I just want to throw that out there as a possible scenario there for you.
Yeah, we were talking to California yesterday. They have one inspector that does complaints for the entire state. And they only get 12 or 15 complaints a year. And so I was amazed at that number. And they, not that we're going to use the California model, I'm not leaning toward that. It's just one of the first discussions that we've had with some of the other state agencies. I think we're talking to South Carolina next. But there are some models out there like that. Thank you. And then this kind of alludes to there is a possibility where we could contract with a third-party agency and allow manufacturers to use that third-party agency or us if we can't keep up with 10 days for residential and 20 days for commercial. Would like to hear from the manufacturers if they want that flexibility or they prefer to have everything a complete contract with a third-party agency. But we would have all the we would have we could have agreements with multiple third-party agencies that have been qualified by us and allow the manufacturers, and again, this may be the smaller manufacturers or the panelized folks, or maybe some of the tiny home folks that have, they could still go straight through us and we could defer them to a third-party agency if we hit a snag in our review timelines.
And Sam, you mean like, so for this model, everything's, at first goes through us, and if we find ourselves in a backlog, we would use the contracted TPA to do reviews for final approval on our behalf.
Yes.
And then also give the option for the manufacturer to do it if that backlog is there. Like, hey, we're a backlog right now. You're authorized to use an approved TPA for this, maybe a time limit or something, right? Like, hey, for the next 2 months until we get caught back up or something.
Yep. Let's just say that a manufacturer is changing their TPA contract, right? And they hit a snag. We don't want to slow up production. We want to give them the capability to come to us for 2 months while they line out a new TPA. Wayne?
I was just gonna comment that is the state DFPC process, is that, in absence of a local jurisdiction, the local fire department having the certifications, you would submit your project to the state. And if the state's plan review time does not meet your construction schedule, then you have the option to seek out that service of, so that's how folks find companies like ours. Because we have to meet those same standards or those same technical requirements as the state, to facilitate their construction schedule. So just wanted to explain that there is precedent for that within state organizations, and what you're describing is how DFPC operates currently.
Great, thanks. Just gonna roll through some of these, and I'm gonna end the meeting here in a minute. Rulemaking 2, again, we're gonna start diving into that now that SCA is on contract and when they get back in town. And then this is the Rulemaking 2 schedule. And accessibility 1030 is still gonna probably be part of Rulemaking 2. We're gonna take that up out of 1.5, I think, and move it to 2. And this is the draft language that we're looking at for that, and that is accessibility must comply with one of the 2 most recent versions of the IBC accessibility standards at the time of plan submittal, or the most recent version if adopted by the division at the time of plan submission. So that we've got time to take a look at that at a future meeting. And with that said, the next meeting is November 12th. We'll update this chart and get it out to everybody too. And like I said, we'll have some red lines to actually work through. Does anybody else? Oh, Tim, you got your hand up again.
No, just a question, with Shums Coda being on board, could you kind of explain a little bit how they're going to help in which sections? Is that going to be with that regional wind and seismic and WUI? I would assume maybe that's what they're.
Yeah, they're going to work with us on going out and finding the most restrictive requirements and across the state. Then we're going to talk about how best to present those and put those, whether it's an appendix to the administrative rules or it's a reference page on our website. And then we've talked to them a little bit about the model that we've already thrown out here and discussed, but we've left the door wide open if they have a better solution or a better process to come forward and bring that. And then so they're going to start presenting what they think might work best. It may be just it may be what we've already talked about. It may be a tweak of what we've adopted about, or it may be something new. What I have not wanted to do is bias them in any way and say you have to use this approach. Since they have so much experience in Colorado and from one corner of the state to the other, they're well entrenched here. They have relationships. They can call people up and they can really think about this and help us get to that, right? Okay, cool. Any other questions or comments or concerns? It's 12 o'clock. Thank you so much for your time. I am going to stop sharing my slides and I'm going to let you all go. Please, if you have any comments that you want to submit electronically, shoot me an email, me or Donnie or Heather, and we will see you folks on the 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
So, see you.
Take care, everyone.